Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Revenue Rebels, the podcast that brings marketing and sales rebels together to share their stories and thinking on all topics related to accelerating revenue generating activities in the B2B world. On this show, we talk about the strategic vision of marketing-led customer experience that unleashes the combined power of technology, content, and data. Are you ready to rebel? Let's get into the show. Hey listeners, welcome back to another episode of Revenue Rebels. Today, we are going to talk about how to leverage video marketing in today's environment. And I'm super excited today to have the CEO and VP of Client Services of 522 Productions, Alisa Vossen, joining us today. And I have to say, just before I do, a really quick intro that I'll let everybody know in full transparency that we've actually been working with 522 now for probably a few years, maybe even a little bit longer, with a really successful partnership where we're working with them around developing really incredible videos for our clients, working with us on the strategy in terms of that content and making it truly aligned to our clients' needs in terms of, the buyer journey. So I'm really excited to be talking with Alisa today because we're going to be able to share a little bit about how they approach that and how they think about video marketing. Alisa, we were actually just talking about this, that what makes 522 really unique is that you're not just there to produce the next video, but actually really think about what is your client's audience's needs? Where are they at in the buying stage or the journey or experience? And how does that impact what you're going to create for your clients? So I'm really excited to have you on board. So thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Rhoan. It's really great to be here. And I'm actually really excited to talk about video marketing within the marketing parallels that we have today, because I think a lot of customers and brands out there really need to know how to adapt, and being adaptable and relevant in today's market really comes with video strategy and a kind of powerful marketing strategy that's really going to resonate with customers.
I totally agree. And when you were saying that, it made me think of the clients that we're working with today jointly and that are producing the video content. And I actually see them really beating out in many, many ways their competition. Before we get started, before we dig into this very juicy and exciting topic, what I'd love to be able to do is kick off with our Rebel segment. If we can just talk a little bit about you, learn a little bit more about your background, and maybe some surprising facts. But if you don't mind, let's start with a little share around something that you would consider a rebel act in your life during your career that maybe had some surprising outcomes.
I think one big surprising rebel act that we did over the last few years was we sort of pumpkin planned the business. So part of pumpkin planning is a book. And I highly recommend it for anybody. And it's so relevant, not to just business, but to just any piece of your life that you really want to sort of like fix. And it comes with a lot of risk, and also comes with a lot of, you have to have a stomach for it, because some things will hurt and some things won't. But when you do the pumpkin plan, the gist of it is essentially, if you look at your garden and you're like, oh my gosh, I have some great flowers, but I have all these weeds too. And the weeds are pulling down my flowers, and I really want, it's like, I don't have time to keep up with all of it. I'm being distracted by all kinds of different things. Once I do this over here, I pluck this weed, I'm back over here. So the idea of the pumpkin plan is to just weed the entire garden bed and just let the flowers grow. And once you do, you will have this most vibrant and beautiful partnership with your flower garden, where there's no weeds pulling at you or like kind of changing the time that you're working with stuff. And so what we ended up doing is saying, we are going to pumpkin plan 522, and we're going to not work with everybody. And we're only going to work with organizations that we know that we can create an impact for, utilizing the skills and the expertise that we have. And that is basically working with organizations who have a mission, who need to change perspectives. Maybe it's how people see them, how they see their products. Could be a financial industry where they have a bad reputation and we need to change the way that people see how they work within the industry. It could be any organization that needed a major shift in their perspective, whether it be within internal, because we also do recruiting and training videos, whether we need to shift cultures for employees, or if it's external, we need to shift the audience perspective. We ended up plucking all those, hey, we just need a video. Can you make a video for us? To, we want to work with organizations that really need a change. And so we decided a bold act was that we put on our website, very large and bold. It said our mission was to rid the world of cheesy videos. And so once we did that, customers started coming to us and saying, I don't want a cheesy video. We're like, great, because we don't know how to make them. So if you really want like a video, a powerful video that's going to change your content and your digital presence, you'll be working with us. But if you need a quick video, if you need like some iteration of you want to make this video for somebody else, a competitor, I can refer you to other people. And that took a lot. It takes a lot to turn away business. It takes a lot to say no to people. And it really took a lot for us to focus. But once we did, the lives that we got to be involved with, the things that we got to change, we got to work in some amazing organizations to really help them kind of evolve and make a bigger impact. It took us a while, but the outcome was really great because we were able to really focus. And I think that's what true value means.
Well, and I think that in terms of a rebel act as a business owner, that's no small move, right? That takes some bravery and some guts to do. So it's a pretty exciting one, and not a lot of companies or business owners are willing to do that. So that's very cool. Now, when you're working with your customers, still sort of continuing with that rebel segment, I'd love it if you could share with us how you're helping customers to kind of, as you put it, you don't want to make any cheesy videos. How do you help them rebel against the norms when it comes to the use of their videos or even to the content of their videos? Do you have a success story that you can share with us really quickly?
I would say for us, when customers come to us, we really have a knowledge with them and a discovery call that basically allows us to look at their business from an outsider. And when we come in as an outsider, we're able to see things that customers aren't able to see in the ground floor. So an example would be if we're working with a nonprofit organization and they have a very siloed audience where they know that only certain people want to work with them. And they have a certain method and a certain strategy and maybe a certain fundraising aspect. And they'll come to us and say, can you help us make a fundraising video? We politely say, we have to throw everything out, right? If you need to hit a certain dollar point, then we're going to come in and we're going to give you a suggestion on how we're going to get there because we know the end result. So a really great example is over this past few months, especially in relevant times, we had a nonprofit that we worked with. We've worked with them for a few years and we've created this legacy luncheon product for them every year. And it follows a certain fundraising model. And this certain fundraising model sends the person who's going to be attending the luncheon. They have to follow certain protocol. They have to do certain things. Then they sit down, they have lunch and they watch a video and then they donate. And so they couldn't have it this year. And so we had to make it a virtual event, which is the first time in like their entire existence, they have done this luncheon completely different. And so they tried to kind of instill the same mold of the fundraising mold, but we had to come back and say, this isn't going to work. Here's why it's not going to work, but here's what will work. We were able to do social videos. We did cross promotion for them. We had an amazing attendance for this virtual event, which is the first time they've ever done it because they provide elderly care, senior services. And so it's a different audience. So they saw such great success through this whole thing, but they had to be willing to adapt. But they also had to be willing to have us come in and say, your current model isn't going to work. And so to have that mutual respect that we can work together was really, really super awesome to go through.
What I was just thinking is it takes a lot of trust to be able to do that. And, you can certainly earn that over time, but you can also earn that with your reputation. I love that example. And very timely. I mean, that's what a lot of companies are going through right now is having to shift to finding ways of doing everything virtually, depending on where you're at, especially in the world. So let's take a moment to shift into what I like to think about as the dream team, which, to me, and to everybody at the company, at any company, is very, very important. But I'm really passionate about the partnership between marketing and sales, and think that this is something that we need to highlight as much as we can, especially when there are great partnerships between these teams. So I'd love to be able to talk a little bit about how marketing and sales are working together in terms of video marketing. We've seen more and more people coming together. More and more often, we're seeing these teams coming together to support each other. I think especially now that, as I said, and as you were just talking about, things are going virtual. So I'd love it if you could tell us a little bit about who are the people that you're typically working with. Are you seeing sales kind of come into the picture more? If yes, how? If not, what do you think about that? Should they be?
Maybe this is another rebel act, but I have a different approach to the philosophy of this kind of sales and marketing leading charge, right? And I actually think it's more internal than it is external. And so the idea is that it's a whole company approach to marketing efforts, because you need everybody on the same page in order for sales and marketing to be successful. If you have a sales and marketing team that is super high dense, but the internal operations and customer success teams are not on the same page, then everything that you've put effort towards is going to kind of just crumble to the ground. So I almost take the opposite approach, that once your internal team is stable and has that rock of like a culture of care, that sales and marketing, it makes their job so much easier, because customers can feel it and they will see it in the way that they work with your team, right? So in terms of where video comes into play, it is the only medium that can play a holistic part from sales enablement all the way down to the kind of ambassadorship, so advocacy at the end should be super easy, where you have loyal customer evidence that allows you to even start the sales cycle all over again.
Sure.
So, So we look at more of like the whole company approach. And when we actually do video content and they say we need a sales video, I'm like, that's awesome. Let's do a sales video, but let's talk about your operations first. And let's talk about how you actually function internally so that I can understand what we're actually selling. And then once I understand what we're actually selling, then we can go back and create a sales pitch video, or it's a thought leadership video, or we can recommend, whether it's a direct email with a product explainer or feature, influencer generated type of videos. So it's really kind of starting from the ground floor and working your way up than it is starting at the top at awareness and working your way down to advocacy.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, but who is it that you're actually working with when you're creating the video? So a buyer comes to you. Is it marketing? To me, and believe me, I completely agree with you. If you look at our book, Change Agents, which I think we wrote in 2017, it talks about everything from initial awareness all the way down to loyalty. So I'm on the same page with you 100% that it's most ideal, let's say, when it's a whole company effort. Now, that's a little bit harder when you're working with a Fortune 100 company and you've got tens and tens of thousands of people across the globe and they're regionally based and they've got different, drivers and motivations and that sort of thing. So I guess what I'm really asking for, especially for our sales listeners, is what kind of work, when you sort of get down into maybe the tactics of it rather than the higher level sort of thinking, what is it that sort of happens when you're working with your initial buyer, who from our perspective is marketing, right? But we know we're here to enable and support sales. Ultimately, video can be used throughout the entire journey, as we have talked about. Can you share a little bit about how this sort of maybe starts at that, how this sort of works at that stage and then can develop throughout the organization?
I think if I go back to top question, which is like the who, right? So for us, unfortunately, the who is all over the place. So we work with account directors, agency directors, CEOs, CIOs, marketing directors, marketing communication specialists, digital content producers, creative directors, program officers, contract officers, human relationship officers. Ultimately, at the end, it depends on where it fits into the ultimate business goals at the top. And so when working with sales enablement, it usually starts with the marketing teams. But at the end of the day, we still are working with the front end sales associates who are working with the customers, whether it's a pitch or not. So we will work with marketing most often, but then we will bring in, especially the CEOs, like tell us who the customers are. You're entrenched with your customers. You know, who is going to be buying faster, who needs more nurturing, who needs more information, who needs more education, who doesn't. How do we get to decision faster by taking them on this journey and what that journey looks like? It's often funny for us where our buyer is different than our actual collaborator. And I don't know if you guys see that as well, but we tend to start with like a set of stakeholders in the beginning of the sales cycle, and then we move to a whole nother set of stakeholders.
Yeah, I would say that we do see that in a number of cases. And that's actually because, going back to something we were talking about a few minutes ago, is that what we're doing and what you guys also do, it reaches into many, many teams within an organization, you know, and it can impact the customer at so many different stages that we have to communicate. It's not like a dictatorship, right? It's not, you know, marketing comes in and says, this is how it's going to be. Actually, it's super collaborative. Those are the really important and most impressive sort of campaigns and programs that are sent out, right? Are those that are highly collaborative. So
I will also add that in sales enablement, we find a lot of success with customer experience, because oftentimes we ask our clients, can we actually talk to some of your customers? Can we actually hear from them the experience they had, what they liked and didn't like? And that's challenging. That's very challenging for customers to give us up their clients to talk to. But once we do, we're able to understand and have a better insight into their sales cycle that allows us to bring a different perspective that they wouldn't have as they're kind of ingrained in their own business.
Totally. Absolutely. Now, you were just talking a little bit about sales enablement videos. Do you have an example of, you know, something that you're particularly excited about or proud of in terms of just that example? And then I'd love it if you could share one in terms of maybe the loyalty, as we're thinking about the customer experience going all the way past purchase, certainly, and into the ambassadorship. I'd love it if you could start just by sharing maybe a fun example or an example that you think is interesting around sales enablement. And then we can talk about one example from the loyalty stage.
Absolutely. One thing I'm really excited about in sales enablement is this idea of personalized sales pitches. This idea is creating custom videos for each individual salesperson that allows this relationship with the customer to come off right at the get-go. So they can see humans, right? They want to know what the experience is going to be like. And in order to do that, you have to see someone's face and make it look real. Oftentimes you get these emails from sales associates that are just trying to get any type of traction or just to have a conversation. But oftentimes people are going to hit delete because they're busy and they are more educated and they have more information and more content in front of them to make decisions about what they like and don't like. And so this idea of personalized sales pitches is something we've been working on for the last few months. And we've been testing it at 522 as well so that we can actually show the results of them. We actually put our sales team and marketing team on video, and we sent them out in direct email campaigns, and we sent them out specifically to different industries, nonprofit, private sector, technology, and each one of the videos had different messaging, and they weren't complicated. They were very simple approach to it. So that means anybody can produce them. It's just what type of result do they get? Those videos generated almost a 40% higher traction rate than just plain email did. And we all know that video is going to create a higher impact, but at what cost does it do it? And so these personalized sales pitches really allows your sales team to connect really fast with your audience in a way that they weren't ever able to do. that starts the customer experience. Right. And you knew how, I think there was a podcast that you had one gentleman on, and he talked about the customer experience. There's where it starts. It's not like the sleazy sales pitch going on, it's all about being that personal. So, and then the beautiful thing about that personalization is that you can take it all the way to loyalty. And if you're able to continue that connection, that human connection through the entire way, then your customers already feel a part of your process. You don't have to over-explain anything. They feel a part of your organization. They feel the culture. They feel the people. And they want to be a part of that. They want to work with their friends. They don't want to work with a team that's going to make their lives harder, not easier.
Absolutely. And, it's funny because you're reminding me of an online commercial video things from I'm probably 9 or 10 years ago. It was quite a long time ago. And it was personalized where you could type in your name and then this guy is singing a song and he's singing your name. And I don't even remember the product, to be honest, but he even had like your name tattooed on his bicep somehow. I wrote a blog post about it. We'll have to go back and take a look and see if we can even find what the product was, but it was really cool. But at the end of the day, it was very fun. It got a lot of attention because it was somewhat new, but it didn't sort of pull all the way. And I think it was a consumer product anyway, but it didn't pull all the way through into like, okay, what next? So what do you want me to do with that? It's great. It's definitely, got a lot of buzz. But then, probably it was a couple of years ago or a year ago when the COO here had signed up for some small subscription of something. I don't remember again what that was because I wasn't the actual buyer, but he showed me he actually got a video saying welcome, and the guy wrote his name on his iPad, with a pen or something. It was like, welcome, Julian. It was completely personalized. We had no idea how he did it. We were both just standing there like, that is so cool. We have to help our clients do more of that because that's going to get attention. Yeah. I think that's very exciting to be doing. And nowadays, I think it's even more important. I would love to see that. Maybe you can share an example of that and we can put it in our show notes for listeners. Let's see. Let's talk about customer experience a little bit. I watched your latest webinar series, which was really great. It was around leveraging video to maximize change and drive growth. And we can link to that as well. I'm happy to share that with our listeners. And one of the things that stood out was how you're incorporating video into each stage of the marketing funnel and we've discussed this already, how important and critical you think that is. I think that really sets you guys apart as well, because you don't see a lot of video production agencies that are kind of thinking at sort of those several steps beyond that content piece. Can you tell us a little bit about why you think or how you think video is instrumental in that customer experience with a brand, right? So how and why is that so important? I think you've touched on it a bit, but then also, share a story of how you can weave a single video or maybe a series throughout the entire buyer cycle or customer experience.
For me, I think video is instrumental in the customer experience because it has to do 3 things, and I call them like the 3 R's. It has to be relevant, it has to be respectful, and it has to give results. And respect for me is a big thing because we need to respect our audience education levels, and we also need to respect our audience's time. And so if you're able to do that throughout the entire buyer's journey, you're giving them this experience of appreciation versus like an onslaught of content. Mm-hmm. And by doing it with a set of videos, not one, right? You can do all the brand videos you want for awareness and consideration. But if you fail at expansion and the advocacy phase of this without showing the client the full gamut of appreciation of why you are like basically honored to have them as a client, then that's where I feel companies really need to kind of change the perspective a little bit about marketing. And I think it's appreciating that holistic view. And so with video, you're able to take a brand video, right? As long as and if it's structured well in a sense that you're able to hit a bunch of topics within that one video, you can cut it into multiple different areas. That way you can take them through this journey and constantly be at their point of information where they need it. So if we don't want to keep sending them the same content over and over again. Behavioral targeting has become very kind of inundated a little bit with, okay, if I went and I'm looking at this pair of shoes, just as a simple kind of example, right? Then I keep getting the same type of content, like buy my shoes, buy my shoes, buy my shoes. But why? I'm missing the why and who and how and what it's going to do to make my life easier or change that. So that's where we kind of lose the content a little bit. And so having a true video marketing strategy allows us to walk them through that journey and give them that experience of appreciation so that when they get to purchase, you feel a part of the brand already. You don't need to be like talked to, you can like work with, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, I'm sure that you work with plenty of companies that haven't developed their strategy yet. Maybe it's their first video and they're stepping into this. Where would you, or how do you sort of start with them? Where do you recommend? And maybe it's even before they pick up the phone or open up their email to shoot you guys a note. Where should people start when they want to step into creating video for their companies?
We have this tactic when we start with companies who just are just getting their feet a little bit wet. We kind of go at the approach of the bleeding neck. Like, tell me what is your biggest issue? Where are you bleeding the most so that we can understand the urgency and level of urgency? And maybe it's not urgent once they start able to talk about like their issues or challenges or goals that they want to hit. Oftentimes it's really easy to start at high level and just get as much awareness and traction as possible. But that only takes you so far. So when we're working with a new organization, we really kind of take a little bit of a longer approach with them. We kind of expand the sales cycle and say, let us come in and have a consulting conversation with you at no cost, just so that we can see if we can actually help you. And if we can help you, we're going to make a few recommendations. And whether it starts with a sales video that could also be on the website, or it could be brand video. Maybe it's culture. Maybe they don't need a sales video. Maybe they need to change their culture. And once they change their culture, they change their audience. So there's really a lot of investigation work that comes with starting out with video, because quality does matter, because quality is a direct reflection of your brand. And if you're not producing quality that clients want, the other customers want, or audience, wants to like watch, then your brand is going to take a hit to it. So we really kind of take a holistic approach and say, okay, where's our bleeding next? What are we trying to hit? And then we also look at longevity, right? We don't want to produce a video that's going to like only last a month or 2 months. We want to make sure that the content that we're producing will have a duration of 1 to 5 years in its expansion, because that's where true ROI comes. If you really have a great piece of content, you can quickly adapt that content at any point and put it anywhere in your funnel, and it will still be relevant. And that's a big challenge for some people.
Yeah. And in fact, that actually leads to the next question that I was going to ask you, which is around ROI. So many companies now, they have to really, especially right now, they're thinking, they're really thinking about their budgets and where should they be really investing to make the most of the dollars that they still have. So how do companies measure the success and ROI of video marketing?
Yeah, companies, I find this fascinating. So we spend a lot of time in our outreach and distribution and really understanding what people's metrics are, as well as customers, like where are your social metrics? Let's see your YouTube page. Let's see where your email distribution is. Let's show us all of the data. And what we find even more fascinating is that a lot of organizations don't have the data. They've just been kind of pushing content. They've just been pushing content.
That's definitely true.
They've left the metrics to the floor. And you're like, well, wait a minute. That should be, to me, data and decisions go hand in hand across everything. So we do find a lot that, organizations may move too fast that they forgot what ROI actually is. And so we always go back to the metrics. Like, are you looking for high likes? Are you looking on social? Are you looking for high engagements? Are you looking for high share? Are you looking for web traffic? Are you looking for it to be a sponsorship video ad? And if that's the case, then we need to get them to a landing page. What's on, so we really look at ROI from the aspect of like, what result are you want us to produce out of this? And if it's fundraising, we openly asked our clients, how much money does this video need to make? Right? And if it needs to make 2 million, cool, I gotcha. But if it, if it needs to make 10 million, they're like, okay, well, what are we working with? And who's going to be our buyers? So we really have to look at metrics. It's just so very interesting to work with customers now, especially in our niche is to work with them on the outreach, right? Because it's oftentimes we hear, well, we put it on YouTube. We only got 6 views. I'm like, okay, yeah, I know. I will say this video. I think the misconception on video is that it's super expensive. Yes and no. And it depends on what you're producing. But if you're eliciting a $5 million response from the video, depending on your metrics, then spending $50,000, right? There's that ROI is there. But if you don't have that budget, which most organizations don't, and we're in a smaller threshold, we can still elicit that high ROI response, but it's all based on the outcomes and the goals that we have for it. And so the misconception that video is expensive is kind of funny to me because it does not have to be. What's expensive is the thought behind it. And so being able to really think through how we're really going to put it out is where the time and labor comes into it. Creativity is the fun part of it, where we get to push the boundaries to get you to the ROI that you need. But you got to allow for that creativity to happen.
I mean, I can say that the work that we've done with you guys, we're definitely, we see the ROI and we make sure that the client can measure that also. But you definitely see companies that have a great idea or they want to create this really cool piece of content. And you need to just take, 1 or 2 steps back and say, okay, let's make sure that we've got it down on paper. So we're really clear. What are the outcomes that we're looking for so that we know how we can measure the success of this? And, just like you guys, which is why I think we do make a great partnership, is, being very value driven. So are we driving value? Are we creating value in every experience, every engagement, every project that we're doing with a client? And I know that you guys think about it the same way. And I think sometimes people do think we can never do video. And I know we've done, larger and smaller engagements in partnership. And I love some of the, the 3-minute explainer videos that we've created that were a huge smash. I'm thinking of one client in particular. I know I'm sure you can.
Right.
That. But that really then developed into, I think, a series that had a huge impact and is measurable. You can really see that impact. So it is possible, but probably I think the core thing there is think a little bit about it beforehand and be really clear on what you want to get out of it. And then that's, once you know what you need to get out of it, then you know what you should be able to invest. So,
and I would say with the partnership, having an organization like Demand Lab being a part of that strategy is really super key because you guys have this long-term relationship, right? You've been able to see the successes and the challenges. And so that is easily able to translate once we start building the video products. And video itself is the point where we can work together and say, okay, cool. We're going to do 12 videos over the course of a year for this small budget, which we can totally do. But being able to work with your team and saying, great, this is how we're going to execute them. This is the strategy. Here's the scripts and this is the way. So having these special pods of team members coming together, all taking care of those elements really is what the ROI and the impact comes to, because we're all watching out for each other's side as well as the end goal for the customer.
Exactly. Couldn't agree more. And also, I think you said it, but we are really tied to the data within our clients' systems. And so we're pulling that stuff out and sharing that with you guys. And, it's a really great positive feedback loop. All right. So, this has been a very fun, I think, and enlightening conversation. I really appreciate the time. I've had such a good time talking about this and learning more. And I think there's a lot that our listeners are going to be able to get from this. But before we close the show, I would love to be able to take you through our lightning round. And that is, sort of the end of show game show, basically, where I get to ask you 5 questions. So I'm going to pull out of a hat and you have no idea what they are. No, I actually don't have a hat here, but I do have 5 questions. And I would love to just be able to run through them and give us sort of the answer off the top of your head, your first instinct would be great. And I think our listeners will learn something and hopefully, enjoy getting some interesting factoids also about you. You ready?
Let's do it. Great. Slightly terrified, but excited.
Tell us, who is a rebel that you look to for inspiration or motivation? And they can be real, fictional, in video, in marketing, outside, whatever. Who is that and why?
Off the top of my head, somebody who I look for inspiration is Pink, the pop star. Yeah. There's some songs I find, I emotionally connect with, some I don't. But at the end of the day, I do really find her edge to be something that I gravitate towards, especially in video. We try and push the boundaries as much as possible. And we tell our clients we're going to push it. Like, don't put us in a box, because if you do, we're not going to be successful at what we do. But she has this really great quote that I think really resonates with me, which is the freedom of knowing who you are and then being it, no matter what anyone else is doing, is what you need to stand for. That's my inspiration, is to stick with who you are, be great at it, and don't let anybody else influence you otherwise.
Well, I have to share that, in fact, Pink has a pretty good portion of the playlist on the Spotify playlist I made for my 10-year-old daughter. Now, not the explicit one, but the playlist is called Girl Power. And, she's a great artist. So I love it.
Yes, I love it.
Cool. And speaking of 10-year-olds, what was your dream job as a child?
Oh my goodness. When I was little, I wanted to be a pediatrician so bad. I was always babysitting. It wasn't a point when I was in college that I realized that I just could not be involved in any type of bodily fluid. And I was like, that is not my thing at all. So I had to quickly pivot. And so business came natural to me. So I realized I would never be a pediatrician. Passing out, probably an issue.
All right. So what is one fun fact about you that listeners might be surprised to know?
I would say, one fun fact that folks would never guess would be me, especially if you know me, that I was homecoming queen in college.
Ooh, okay. That's exciting. On the stage and crowned? Is that how that goes? I was never a homecoming queen.
It was actually at a football game in front of the entire stadium. And I didn't even invite my parents, but my sister, I have a twin sister, told them about it. And I was like, why would you tell them about it? Now they're going to come all this way up here and watch this thing, and I'm never going to be crowned. And then I was crowned, and my mother's like, as soon as she hugged me, she slapped me. She was like, why wouldn't you tell me? I was like, I don't know.
That's very cool. Okay. 2 more questions. So what is one piece of advice that you would give to an up and coming marketing leader or, business owner or, somebody just sort of making their way or taking the next step in terms of their professional career?
I would say for everybody, because this is something that folks think they do, but they don't do, is to take risks. And taking risks means getting a little sweaty, having a little bit of a sick stomach, trying to oh my God, did I make the right decision? Did I not do it? It's to not overthink it and just to try different things, be different, and take different risks, because you'll be surprised at the opportunity and doors that open and the people that you get to connect with when you actually take a risk. And some folks will say, I take risks all day long. You don't. It's not until you're uncomfortable. That's when you know you took a risk.
That's one of my favorite answers. I have to say that was totally, I can connect with that. I love that. All right. Last question. Back to sort of the rebel world, that we live in. If you could do one rebel act today without any consequences, what would it be?
Oh gosh. I would be very disruptive in messaging. And I would not consider all the emotional ties that come with it or outcomes or considerations. A lot of times organizations, even us, are like, okay, well, if we say this, what are the ramifications with all of these different communities? And so if I could just be disruptive with messaging and really kind of change people's thought perspectives or change the way they see things, I would like it would be a really fun activity, but it would come with a very high risk and a lot of backlash. But so as we all know, but if we were able to like get buy-in from organizations to be more disruptive without the backlash, I would really love to do that, because I think we're missing out on a lot of things because we're kind of sheltering our messaging just to make sure everybody's okay on the other end. And I think a lot of organizations struggle with this a ton.
I agree. Really thoughtful. I appreciate that. And having you on the show was just an absolute delight. I really appreciate you taking the time out to join us today. And I look forward to a future conversation. One last thing before we go, what is the best way for our listeners to reach out to you?
The best way to reach out to me is my contact information is on our website at 522productions.com. I email and my phone number as well, so feel free to call or email. LinkedIn is another great avenue. I'm constantly on LinkedIn and having conversations with different organizations and or just individual people who have questions or want to like have just an open dialogue. Feel free to reach out in that capacity as well.
Great. Good. And for our listeners, it is Alisa Vossen, Vossen, and 522 Productions. So find her on LinkedIn. Thanks again. I really look forward to being able to connect again soon.
Thank you, Rhoan. This was a lot of fun, and I appreciate being on the podcast.
Yeah. Wonderful. Big thank you to our listeners for tuning in to Revenue Rebels. Remember, you can get our show notes, links, and other content related to today's topic at demandlab.com/revenue rebels. While you're there, let us know if there's a leader you want to hear from or a topic you'd like to hear more about on this show. I'm your host, Rhoan Morgan, and you can find me on Twitter at Rhoan Morgan. It's RHOAN Morgan. And of course, look us up on LinkedIn, look up Demand Lab, or search for RHOAN Morgan. And finally, only if you think we've earned it, please head over to Apple Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you're listening to us right now, and subscribe, rate, and review the show. Until next time, Rebels, thank you.